I'm going to be talking to you in this video about the assignment for this particular module, Distinctive Approaches in Early Childhood Education and Care. Now, when you look at the left-hand side of WebLearn, you'll see there's a section on the assessment. And if you click on Assessment Details, as I've done just here, you'll get a bit of information that come up. Now, the key thing with this module is that you need to write a reflective essay. Now, this reflective essay is of 6,000 to 7,000 words, which you can see here. And it's based on a visit that you're going to do to a piece of provision that's different from where you work. So, for instance, if you work in a reception class of a primary school, and you've always had an interest perhaps in the work of Steiner or the work of Montessori, but you've never visited one of those settings, you might choose to spend a day in a setting like that, really looking in detail at what they're doing, talking to the people there, observing the practice there, making reflective notes, and your essay is going to be based on that. Okay, so there's a variety of different places you could go. As you see going through the module, you'll see there's beach schools, forest schools, Steiner schools, Montessori provision, and so on. So there's plenty to choose from. So you're going to make the choice based on your own interest, perhaps something that you've never had a chance to do before. And you don't have to go for a long period or anything like that. You just need to go for a day or a session. It kind of depends how that provision is run. Now, when you do your assignment, all the learning outcomes need to be addressed. So again, look down this left-hand navigation and you'll see where it says Learning Outcomes. And when we click on this and open, we can see that there's 3 for this module. Sometimes there's 4, but for this module there's 3, and they all need to be demonstrated in this essay. So you can see the first one's asking for an in-depth knowledge of distinctive approaches. So when it's saying in-depth, that's certainly saying to me that you need to be doing plenty of reading and referring to it in your assignment. Secondly, you've got to demonstrate a critical understanding of how these approaches have informed early childhood practice. So as you go through the module, you'll realise that we haven't suddenly arrived at the kind of provision we've got now. There's a whole history, there's a whole group of people and events and policies, etc., that have led to where we are today. So you need to have an understanding of these approaches and how they've impacted on early childhood practice in a sort of general way. But thirdly, so this third learning outcome here, you're also going to be thinking about your own values and philosophies. So sometimes they might be a little bit at odds with what the general policy is, and perhaps you even work in a set of provision like Montessori, so you might hold those kind of ideas very dear. And so you're going to be thinking about your own values in relation to the different ideas that you've been introduced to in the course. So when you do your reflective essay, all these 3 need to be there. Now, as you go through your materials, I'm going to go down this left-hand navigation again, you'll see that week 3 is all about undertaking the assignment. So again, you've got materials that are going to really help you to be thinking about what you need to do. All right, so really look at that week in depth. And remember, you can return again and again and again to a particular week. You don't just have to look at it once. So you might find it quite useful to look at this a number of times so you're very clear what you need to do. Now, I'd suggest that when you come to actually doing your assignment, you think about a particular structure. Now, obviously, you've got to have an introduction to your assignment. Any assignment's got to have that, hasn't it? So you need to do that. And then I would introduce the idea next that there are a range of distinctive approaches that have all had an impact on early childhood education and care. They've all influenced provision in some way. And you might want to also say what's been influential on your practice. Now, you're not going to do this in a very general way. You're going to be referring to reading, of course. All the way through we need to have reading referred to. Then I would move on in the essay to think about the particular visit that you did. Why did you choose, for instance, to go to a Steiner setting? Or why did you choose to go to a forest school? Okay, so say why you've chosen to visit where you did. Remember as well that the actual setting and actual people within it need to remain anonymous. We need to think ethically in our work, don't we? So you can just say it was a forest school in the north of England. That tells us enough information without having to name the particular one. Now, if you've chosen a particular approach, you must show some in-depth knowledge of this approach. So it's not going to be enough to just read one or two things, say, about Montessori. You need to really try to look in depth at that particular approach. So you need in your essay to have a detailed section really exploring that approach. And in a way, you can do it one of two ways. And it's very much up to you how you do this. You could choose to have a detailed section where you just outline the approach with lots of literature and then move on to discuss your visit in relation to what you saw. Or perhaps you could integrate the two. So you might want to, for instance, if you were going to a Montessori setting, have a bit of reading and discussion around the Montessori materials, and then perhaps interweave into that what you saw in practice. How did you see the children using those materials? So really it's kind of up to you how you do that. But the key thing is you need to be drawing on your reading about the approach, but also what you observed in that visit. It'd also be really interesting, I think, to think about whether the setting strictly adhered to a particular approach. Because although people wrote materials for people to understand how a particular method should be undertaken in practice, Montessori being an obvious example, perhaps you've gone to a Montessori setting that does something a little bit different to that. Perhaps there's some aspects of her philosophy that you see working very much in practice, and there's other ways perhaps they've deviated. So again, I think this is an example where some prior reading before the visit would be very good, and also talking to the practitioners there will be very, very useful for you to draw some ideas upon for your essay. And I also think it would be useful to have some lasting impressions of the visit incorporated into your reflective essay. Maybe it made you reevaluate your own provision. Maybe it's made you think about your own values and practices in relation to early childhood. Maybe even you're going to change something in your own provision on the basis of something that you observed or heard about on your visit. And then finally, of course, you need to have a clear conclusion, just summing up the kind of key points of your essay. And I suppose the final thing to add here are general points about any kind of assignment. Clear academic writing is crucial, so really spend time proofreading your work, etc. Do make sure that you're referencing according to the guidelines that we have, and we've got a separate video for that to help you, and certainly there's all sorts of materials that can help you on referencing. And read widely. If you've only read a few bits of text, you're not going to have the same knowledge as somebody who's read widely on the topic. So good luck with them, and we certainly look forward to reading them.